And with that, welcome inside the Tuesday Coaches Press Conference edition of Big Ten Live. I'm your host, Rick Pizzo. The countdown has gone from months to weeks to days, and now, for some, it is down to hours as the Big Ten season officially opens up on Thursday with Minnesota and Nebraska. We heard from both Matt Rule and PJ Fleck ahead of that game during the Monday press conference edition of Big Ten Live, and now we bring you some of those coaches whose teams will take the field on Saturday. Ryan Day and the Buckeyes, number 3 in the land preseason, set to take on Indiana. Jim Harbaugh hosted his press conference on Monday, but Michigan and the university had some technical difficulties, so we'll bring you Jim Harbaugh's press conference today. You'll also hear from James Franklin as Penn State opens up non-con against Power 5 opposition in West Virginia. Michael Locksley sees great things for his Maryland team. They open with Towson. We'll hear from Locks. And Greg Schiano, a rare Sunday home opener against Northwestern. All those coaches set to come your way during this Tuesday press conference edition of Big Ten Live. We do begin with Ryan Day in Columbus.
Indiana game, Kyle McCord will be the starter. And Devin Brown is going to play in the game. I think that Kyle has done a great job over the last 2 weeks of showing consistency. He's played very well in practice. But Devin also, throughout the body of the preseason, has shown that he deserves to play. So expect both of them to play. We have confidence in both of them. I think that's significant that we have two guys that we feel confident playing in a game. This is something that's a little uncharted territory for me, but you just go on what you see every day in practice. And I think that Kyle's consistency the last couple of weeks has allowed him to be the starter. He deserves that. But I also think Devin deserves to play in the game as well. So how much, all that's still to be determined, but we've at least come up with that conclusion here.
Follow-up, if someone would have told you, I don't know, maybe in the spring this is how it was going to turn out, it'd be so close to be playing both guys, would you be pretty surprised?
I didn't have a lot of expectations other than I felt like both guys have a chance to be really good quarterbacks, and you just don't know. And when you start to create expectations, then maybe you can start to do things that can put you down a certain path. I decided not to do that. Even really stepped away a lot in the spring and kind of let it all play out. Been more involved this preseason. But pleased that we have at least two guys that we feel confident about going to play in this first game. And ultimately, we have to go win this game. It's a road game. It's a conference game against a very well-coached team. Got a lot of respect for Tom Allen and the way he does things. And so this is going to be a real test for our team early on in the season.
Ryan, you said this is uncharted territory for you a little bit. So what do you rely on then as you try to formulate a plan to play two quarterbacks?
Well, I think the first thing is you just have to go watch them play in the game. And it's one thing, in practice you see certain things, but to get tackled and to move the team down the field and, finish off drives, do well on third down, do well in the red zone, that's going to continue to play itself out during the season. And there's been teams that have done this similar before, and ultimately I told the guys when I met with them today that the goal is to go, win championships. And when the season's all said and done, the story is going to be written. What we can't do is ride the roller coaster every drive, every game. They both need each other right now, and I think that's great. They make each other better. I think the competition has made them better, and it's been back and forth. And so we'll kind of go into the game, each game with a plan, and then evaluate it after that. I think that's all we can do.
The idea of not riding the roller coaster, can that apply to the coaches as well? When you have two that can play, weighing like, oh, this doesn't look that good. Should I put the other guy in now? Like, how do you think that might go?
Well, I told both of those guys this isn't going to be a situation where they need to be worried about getting quote unquote benched, being in the game. That's not the case. They have to go play through some of that stuff. CJ kind of went through it his first couple games, and when he was here as a sophomore, and you just don't know how it is going to play out. But all we can do is just do the best we can right now. Go win the first game is the goal, and how that looks. I don't know exactly how it's going to be. And then a week from now, we're in a different place. We have more to go on, a bigger sample size of in game, and we go from there. I just don't have a crystal ball on this, and I'm not sure how it is going to shake out. But I think what we're doing is fair based on what we've seen this preseason.
Right, quarterback position being different than any other position in terms of the transfer portal and things like that. Last week you said the winner, the tiebreaker, would be the guy that responds when his back is up against the wall. Kyle McCord being pushed by a younger guy at quarterback. If you get pushed by that younger guy and he goes past you, that's something significant. So to see him respond these last 2 weeks with that kind of pressure, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I'm pleased with that. I think that is exactly how things shook out a little bit this preseason. I think that Devin made a real strong push about 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, and then Kyle responded with some really consistent play. And that was a good response, and that was, very encouraging. Now it's time to go play in games, though, and we certainly have seen enough in practice to believe that both guys can perform in a game, and now it's time to go put it on the field. And when you're in the game, you really get an idea of what is going on. In practice, you have controlled settings and you try to make them as game-like as possible. But again, now time to go play.
Right next door, Rob Oliver, Columbus Dispatch.
You're part of a big coaching network. Have you talked to anybody about how this has worked? Have you been part of it? I don't know if Chip's been part of it or not. You plan to do that, just kind of pick the brain of somebody who's been through it.
I talked over years with different coaches, just because quarterback play is something that obviously I've been a part of my whole life, and you talk to different people about that, and the theory of if you don't have a starting quarterback, you don't have a quarterback. I mean, that wasn't the case for Alabama when they had Tua and Jalen and Mac Jones. Ohio State attracts some of the best players in the country, and it all worked out great for them. That's one example. You think about the year when the national championship was won here most recently, they had 3 guys who played. You try to do the best you can. A good problem to have is when you have multiple guys you feel good about putting in the game. And I think the more we play in these games, the more we're going to see the strengths come through. And we'll just, on a weekly basis, try to do the best we can, put a game plan together that gives our team the best chance to win. And again, I see our receivers getting in rhythm. I see the offensive line getting in rhythm with both guys. If I didn't feel that, then I would step in. I think both guys have won the team, and I think they feel confident with them being in the game on Saturday.
You kind of comment on this. Is it fair, though, to say that in a perfect world, you'd have that one guy that would step forward? Just from a comfort level, maybe even as a coach?
I don't know. I mean, we'll see where we're at this point next week, but if that's the way it's been in the past. But that doesn't necessarily mean that has to be the way moving forward. And these things usually have a way of working themselves out. But, again, I think the best thing to do is to let them go play in a game and come back for air over the weekend.
Fourth row right, Spencer Holbrook, Letterman Road.
Ryan, when you said that you want to play both, how do you try to navigate that going into game planning and letting Kyle get into a rhythm, but also making sure that you're going to get Devin in there, not interrupting Kyle's rhythm and allowing him to get into the flow of the game?
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest challenge, right? What you just mentioned, but we have to go play, and it isn't just about that drive. It isn't about anything else other than winning the game. And they're going to go get the plays. They're going to have the same game plan, and they just got to go put it on the field and go win the game. And I mean, certainly that part of it, I think, is a feel, is what's going on in the game. But both of them are going to have to be locked in on that and go from there.
Right behind him, Cameron T. Robinson, Athletic.
Real quick to clarify that, is for Kyle and Devin, is it, like you said, is it a feel on how they play, or are you talking about like split reps, or how do you?
We'll see how the week goes. Yeah, we'll kind of see how the preparation is, and then kind of decide from there.
What did Kyle do, like especially in the last week, that made you think like, okay, he's the guy who's going to start?
Again, the consistency. Yeah, he's been accurate in the passing game. He's done a good job with his reads, taking care of the football, and that's important with the surrounding cast that we have on offense, is to make the routine plays routinely and take care of the football, and ultimately lead the team down the field to score touchdowns, and he's done that. So that's why he's starting.
Far right, Tom Sperry, WBNS 10 TV.
Coach, no matter who it is, there'll be a rookie quarterback in there. What do you expect out of Indiana? And that's been a tough place to play over there. What do you think they try to do to disrupt the quarterback?
Well, the first thing is they have a very different team than they did last year. They've added a lot of new pieces, a lot of talent coming in, different little change up on the staff. And, we've been in dogfights with them early in the season before, and they're very well coached. So we have to do a great job of adjusting to some of the changes that they've made on both sides of the ball. But ultimately, it's going to come down to fundamentals, taking care of the football, tackling really well, hand placement, all the things that come into play in the first game, and handling the environment, going on the road for the first game, conference game.
What's the guys, I mean, obviously, they've gotten all the attention. How they handled all that, because you played it, you understand that at Ohio State, that's the position everyone talks about, and, every eye is going to be on whoever's in there.
Yeah, and every play is going to be, criticized or, applauded, and but when you come here, that's part of the deal. And, I shared with them both that, the great thing is they both get an opportunity to be the quarterback at Ohio State with an unbelievable team surrounding them. So that's the exciting part of it, and that's what they want. That's when they decided to come to Ohio State, they knew that it wasn't going to be easy, and they're fighting tooth and nail to get on the field, and so that's the exciting part of it. But yeah, I mean that's what comes with being an Ohio State quarterback, and they know that, and that's why they're here.
Right behind him, Clay Hall, WSYX.
Ryan, do you feel, in terms of the big plays you allowed defensively in those last two games, do you feel like that's been fixed? Do you feel confident in Noel's approach this year? I mean, they broke your back. I mean, you might have won it all. So.
Right. Well documented, and it's something that when you look at the season, that was an area that stuck out like a sore thumb, an area that needed to get addressed. We spent a lot of time on that. The answer will be, we get to the field on Saturday, and then as the season, shakes out. So we know that that's something that hurt us last year and it did cost us. So you won't know until you get into a game. That's the test. I say that all the time is that, you prepare for tests, in any kind of subject you have here in college. It's the same thing when you get to the game on Saturday. You find out what your preparation was like and if it worked. But as you know, that's something that has been, something we've really focused on defense.
Right behind him, Nathan Baird, Cleveland.com.
I'm just curious if, in this situation, have you had a two-quarterback plan all along, like in the war or whatever, or did you have to come up with one specifically for this scenario?
No, didn't really have an expectation of what this would look like. We're getting the guys as many reps as we possibly can. I guess the only adjustment that I made was, and that we made as a staff, was going to the two fields where we could get more reps. So when we would usually go 1s, 2s, and 3s, we were going really 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, and getting, I think, 48 plays in a 2-period session, which was great. And so the more reps you get, the better. The more body of work you have, and both of these guys need reps. So that was really the only thing that we changed during the preseason. The rest of it we've just done like we normally do.
Third row right, Dylan Davis, Delaware Gazette.
I know last week when we talked to you, you said you were looking for a sizable gap to name that starter. I guess, has what Kyle's done, is that, would you call that a sizable gap? Is that a medium gap? I guess, how would you define that gap?
I think it's enough to be named a starter, and then they're both going to play. So, yeah, I think, it's not a sizable gap, but it's enough to be the named a starter.
And then I want to ask, kind of piggyback on what Spencer said, these guys are still going to be evaluated, obviously, and they're still competing for ultimately the starting job. Things could still change. How do you guard against these guys maybe playing outside of themselves or, trying to do too much in the game, trying to put something on the field that maybe ultimately flip-flops the situation?
Yeah, to talk about it and make sure that they understand that that's not going to be the case, that this is something that's ongoing and that we're looking at this through this season. So at some point the season's going to be over and we're going to look back on this year. And sometimes it's hard to do it in that manner. We all want to look right now and see what's going to happen with the whole season and, react to what's going on right now. But if you can take a step back and think about, okay, at some point January is going to be here. And we get to January, we're going to look back on this season and there's going to be a whole bunch of football played, no matter how it shakes out. And so that's not easy to do, but it's something that we've talked about so that they understand that this isn't about one play or one drive. This is about the entire season. And again, not easy to do, but we're definitely talking to them about that so that they understand that it's not about one play or one drive.
Third row left, Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
Ryan, have you guys decided who's going to handle the kicking duties on Saturday?
Jaden will handle the kicking duties, yeah.
What led to that decision?
Yeah, just overall consistency again. We chart everything, and he's done a really good job. In the spring, he did a nice job kicking off for us last year. and his overall consistency has allowed him to be the starter. And we just really go off of the chart. How many kicks have you made in this area? How many kicks have you made in this area? We've had live situations. What have those been like? We look at him in the stadium. We look at him in practice. Kind of chart everything and do the best we can. And so he's won that job.
Just to clarify, he'll be doing everything, field goals and kickoffs?
Yes, both of those. Yep.
Far left, Joe Nugent, WCMH.
How significant is the challenge in week one preparing for a team that has 23 transfers and trying to find film on these guys?
Yeah, we have Billy Homer in house who does all the evaluating of our transfer portal guys, and so he goes through and does the best he can to evaluate the film based on what he sees at other schools. But like you said, it's hard to figure out how the team's going to look when you have so many new faces. So what you do is you try to combine what you've seen in the past. There's certainly, Matt Guerreri's a new coordinator there. They have new pieces on their staff. They have new players. So there's a lot in there. And you have to have contingency plans. That's part of, coming out of the gates with a conference, road game with all these things into consideration. There's some unknowns. But that's common to almost every season. And, like Indiana, we have a new quarterback here, new quarterbacks playing. And so, what is that going to look like? And you have to be able to, adjust in game.
Front row left, Mitch Stacy, Associated Press.
Back to Kyle for a second. He spent so much time watching CJ over the last 2 years in all these pressure-packed situations and just about any situation you can think of. What kind of advantage did that give him as far as, stepping right into this role?
Well, you'd like to think that there's an expectation of what to expect because you've seen it now. He's been in the program here and for a few years, and he's seen the good and the bad and the ugly, really. And a big part of life is knowing what to expect. And so he's been around, so he's at least seen it. Now he's got to go do it. It's a whole different thing when you're actually physically doing it than watching somebody else go through it. But I do think that allows you a little bit more of it, anticipation as opposed to reacting to the situations and seeing what's coming down the road.
Front row right, Austin Ward, Rivals, the podcast.
Ryan, I would think when you have 3 new starters on the offensive line and you're evaluating a quarterback battle, that probably consumed most of your thoughts, or at least the temptation would be for that. Do you feel like you were able to turn that off enough, as much as you wanted maybe, to think about all the other decisions that you had to make this month, or did it actually overwhelm everything else?
It was a big part of it, yeah, for sure. But I think, we've got really good people in place here that have allowed me to look at things from a wider lens, like you're talking about. And we've had several team meetings to talk about different situational things and to be around the team. Try to get as many special teams as I possibly can, as opposed to jumping in the quarterback meetings. But it's been important to be involved with the quarterbacks because it's 2 guys who haven't played a whole bunch of football, and so I've been very much involved with that. I think Justin Fry has done an excellent job with the O-line in what he's done, and he's got a really good supporting cast helping him there with the O-line. But and that certainly takes a little heat off of me. But we know how important the quarterback is, and we have to make sure that's right. But I'd say overall for this camp, I've been allowed the opportunity to jump around.
Second row middle, Stephen Mead, Cleveland.com.
Ryan, just with Kyle again, I think Kyle was the first quarterback that you guys landed with you as the head coach here. And he's kind of been here for a long haul a little bit. Have you learned anything about him that maybe you didn't know when you first started recruiting him through all this process? And
you learn more and more. I think we're about to learn more now that he's going to go be in a game where he is the starter. He started that one game when he was younger, but I think we'll learn more about him. But up until this point, somebody who does a really good job off the field, making connections in the locker room. I think a lot of the guys, look up to the way that he handles himself off the field. Very serious, hard worker. He's always in there watching film. And so now it's going to be exciting after all the work leading up to this to see him get on the field and play.
Behind him, Pat Murphy, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, we've heard and seen a number of receivers make plays out there. You guys have talked about a bunch of them. How many guys are you comfortable with going out there and playing meaningful snaps heading into week one?
That's a good question. I would say we're probably in the 5 to 6 range, in terms of depth. Not getting into names, but I think we would feel comfortable putting, about 5 or 6 guys in the game there. 2 or 3 guys at tight ends. A whole bunch of guys at running back. So we do have some depth, and it allows us an opportunity to be creative too.
How much does it help to have that group that you are confident in, veterans coming back with a new quarterback, regardless?
It's critical, and that's the thing that I've been trying to get with some of the wide receivers to make sure they understand is, when you have a guy who's doing it for the first time, you got to paint a really good picture. When it's zone, you got to really space it out. When it's man, you got to win, and that's important because certainly on third down and certainly in the red zone is where the quarterback's got to be on point. They got to do that's where they make all their money, and we need the wide receivers to not only show their talent but their experience and their maturity, and until they get into a rhythm, which they will.
Front row, Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, the new clock rules in college football are now in effect with the no stoppage, or clock not stopping after first down. What do you think of that rule? How do you see it as sort of affecting things for you guys this year?
Yeah, I think we looked and did a quick study on the number of plays coming out of this weekend's game, and I think it was around 63, which is significant, I think. So we'll see how after a whole bunch of games are played this weekend what that number is, but it is going to shorten the game a little bit.
Do you see teams trying to use that against you? Or try to kind of ball control things? Teams have kind of done that in the past.
Yeah, I think teams try to do that, but ultimately you have to do what you're going to do to get into a rhythm, and like you said, if you're up on a team and you can shorten the game, I think that makes a lot of sense. But there are times where we do play in games where that is the game plan, where teams want to slow us down and keep the offense off the field, but you also have to be getting first downs and you have to run the football. So you want to get yourself into a rhythm on both sides of the ball without overdoing it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see after this weekend what the numbers look like.
Right next door, Tim May podcast, Letterman Road.
Thank you, Jerry. Was there a point a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, where you pulled Kyle aside and you talked about having conversations with both of them, and just was there ever a moment where you say, hey, you're kind of blowing it here, kid? I mean, were there ever those kind of like face-to-face kind of moments where, and you saw him step up?
We had constant conversations, first off, daily conversations, but then there are some points where you visit with the guys and say, here's where you're at, here's what I've seen, here's where we need to get better. Never really drew lines in the sand during the preseason, but there were ebbs and flows, and there was definitely times where Devin did pull ahead. We made that clear. There was times where Kyle pulled ahead at different times. But ultimately, where we are right now, we feel like the last 10 to 14 days that the consistency's allowed Kyle to be the starter. So, again, it's healthy because it's great competition going on. But yeah, we've had to communicate that with guys and let them know, here are the things you're doing well, but here are the things you got to improve if you want to be, competing at a high level and be the starter.
And when are the butterflies at the most in a coach's stomach, a head coach's stomach, gut? Is it that first game, first starting? You understand what I'm saying? I mean, I would think the butterflies were circling around something else this time a year ago with CJ coming back as your returning starter. But how much does that add to the butterfly quotient?
Yeah, it doesn't help. That's for sure. Yeah, I mean, every game there's butterflies. That's just the way it is. But you go off what you see in practice, and we have a team that's played football before, so that helps with that. When you have a bunch of guys like I was again thinking about where we were at 2 years ago when CJ went into that game against Minnesota. There was a ton of unknowns on defense, and you had a brand new quarterback. We talk about butterflies, a whole bunch of butterflies on that one. This one here, we're a little bit more veteran surrounding the quarterback. So, you go off what you see in practice, and if the guys perform like they do in practice and take care of the football, then it's going to be a good day. If they don't, then it's not going to be. That's just the bottom line. So, yeah, there's some unknown there, but there's also some knowns in other areas.
And are you telling yourself right now, I didn't mean to ask third, but patience is the key here, meaning I know you've got to be urgent and stuff, but he is going to be a first-time starter.
Obviously,
I don't know if patience is the right word. Yeah, I mean, well, there has to be urgency, like you said, because first off, we got to win this game. I mean, this is not going to be easy to go on a road with brand new quarterbacks and all the different challenges that we have in a conference game. So, we got to take care of the football. We got to be able to tackle well. We got to run the football. We got to stop the run. We got to do those types of things. Play situational football, and the guys have to play well. They do. But that being said, I think each week we're going to have to identify the things that the guys are doing well, figure out how they did in game, how do they respond to certain situations, how did the team respond to them. Those are all things that we'll continue to evaluate and see where it goes. But to your point, we're not just going to bench somebody because they had a bad play. That's these guys both deserve to get out there and show what they have and work through mistakes.
Right behind him.
The last time we met, you asked me some questions about the state of college football issues. In thinking about that and having the opportunity to write down my thoughts with clarity, I'd like to take this time to share them with you. These are my views, my opinions, as I've seen college football, college sports take shape since my days as a student athlete and now as a current coach. I want to take this opportunity to speak about the big picture, much bigger than any one game, bigger than any game this season, the issues I see affecting college athletics, college football, and more specifically, the student athletes, the talent. The big one, the one I first started mentioning back in 2020, and then again in 2022 at the Big Ten Media Days. I continue to advocate for that today, a system of revenue sharing with the student athletes. Now, I'm aware and understand that when someone speaks out in defense of those without a voice, attempts are made to diminish the individual's character and credibility. As a former player and current coach, mentoring many of these student athletes, what I wanted to do is be a voice for the student athletes. I want them to be treated with the respect and the dignity that they deserve. What I don't understand is how the NCAA, television networks, conferences, universities, and coaches can continue to pull in millions and in some cases billions of dollars in revenue off the efforts of college student athletes across the country without providing enough opportunity to share in the ever-increasing revenues. When student athletes call it a game, the corporate types call it a business. When the student athletes call it a business, the corporate types call it a game. I am aware that Notre Dame athletic director Jack Swarbrick said, and I quote, "I think the decision-making lost its way in terms of the focus on the student athlete and what's primarily best for them. But we are where we are. We have to try to make it work." And we do. We have to try to make it work. We have to try to make it better. And right now, the current status quo is unacceptable and won't survive. In my opinion, when we capitalize on the talent, we should pay the talent for their contributions to the bottom line. The game of football has evolved since inception and dramatically started to change in the 1970s, where at that time, one game a week was televised. Today, every game during the 12-week regular season is broadcast. In the major conferences, every game is nationally televised to millions of households and sold-out stadiums every Saturday. Why wouldn't we let the student athletes share in the success of their sport? And we all should be about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm calling for a system that is fair, equitable, and benefits all involved. Don't exclude the student athletes from the profits. In my opinion, You can't say you're about diversity, equity, and inclusion if you aren't willing to include the student athletes in revenue sharing. And it's a short-sighted view of history to presume a system of revenue sharing would topple the current structure. Look at some of the companies who have implemented revenue sharing. Amazon, UPS, US Steel, to name a few. I was watching that movie Air. Dolores Jordan wouldn't let her son, Michael Jordan, sign an endorsement deal without Nike sharing in the revenue. And I think we can all agree that it worked out pretty well for Nike. As an NFL player, I was part of the change in NFL free agency rules and profit sharing with the talent. I lived it. I benefited from it. So did thousands and thousands of players that followed. I think we can all agree that the organizations and the NFL as a league and corporate entity have benefited greatly as well. I'm not saying that I have all the answers. What I am hoping to accomplish today is sparking constructive conversation and timely action with and between the NCAA, conferences, coaches, universities, certainly a group representing the student athletes, as well as experts and legal minds who specialize in revenue sharing. Thank you for allowing me to share that with you.
If you have a question, raise your hand. We'll get to you here. On the left, Wojo.
Jim, just one question on that. So obviously you're looking for something beyond NIL that's not sufficient. In your mind, what's happening right now?
Correct. Not enough ways. More for the student athletes. And as I said, a system that's fair and treats student athletes with the respect and the dignity that they deserve.
On the right, Larry.
Jim, do you have a suggestion or a framework of how this would work? Do you have an idea in mind of what would be a start to make this happen?
People got to get in a room, and it's got to be the NCAA, the universities, who is the voice for the student athletes. I'd encourage other coaches to help be that voice. But I don't know exactly how that sausage is going to get made, but the current system, the status quo, we just can't keep kicking this can down the road. It's got to change, and it's got to happen timely, now.
Do you think the players could be employees of the university, and besides Title IX, what prevents Michigan from sharing their Big Ten money with the players?
As I said, I don't have all the answers. Experts, legal minds, there's legal minds that have to be thinking about that. Those that are the most expert legal minds and the all involved need to figure those issues out.
On the left, Ryan.
How many conversations have you had with Ward about that subject, and what have those been like?
Well, all those conversations are privileged, but that's as I said at the beginning, these are my thoughts. These are my opinions. These are not the opinions of anybody else or the university or other than my own.
Tony?
So on that basis, in your opinion, what is it right now that is the most wrong? It's clear that you don't like where it's headed, or where it has arrived. What you spelled out a number of things, but what specifically is it that bothers you the most?
For the student athletes across the country, not just my team, not just our sport, but student athletes in every sport across the country, the talent to share in the ever-expanding revenues of college athletics.
Stand on the left, Aaron.
You mentioned status quo a couple times. What is your fear if this doesn't change? Like what's going to happen if nothing changes?
I don't know. Now's the time to address it. It's overdue. It's overdue.
John?
Have you talked to any of your players about this or heard from families on the recruiting trail, for example, about this subject?
I really haven't shared this with anybody. Again, my views, my opinions, from what I've seen, experienced from my days as a student athlete, through playing professionally, to coaching, both professionally and college.
Based on your experience with the NCAA, do you think this change will happen?
Those groups have to get together. I'll say that again. That's the plan. The plan. You asked me what I think the plan was. Experts, legal minds, the NCAA, the university. There certainly has to be the student athletes have to be represented and have a voice. Coaches. I want to help be that voice for those that don't have a voice right now.
Jim, without getting into specifics or naming names, how on a human level has a lack of revenue sharing impacted your players and their families?
I think you see the same thing going on with the screenwriters right now. I mean, the talent. Who do we all go to watch? Who do we all go to see? Those efforts of those individuals that are playing, that are the talent, and they need to share in the profits.
You mentioned the screenwriters. Could you see, if the situation continues as it is in years down the road, a strike of some sort happening?
I don't think this current system is going to survive, and the status quo is unacceptable. That's my opinion.
Austin?
Going into anything else would be speculation.
Jim, how have your own experiences with NCAA and the rules as they stand right now influenced these thoughts that you're sharing in terms of the status quo?
This is something I've long talked about. As I mentioned, this didn't wake up this morning and decide to share this. This goes back to 2020, 2022, as you know.
Well, Joe?
Jim, is part of the spark of this the Big Ten expanding, all the conferences are expanding, bigger playoff and everything? Is that partly what sparks it because so much more revenue will be coming from that?
It's the elephant in the room. So it needs to be talked about constructively, and action needs to be taken.
Tony?
But I guess just one more attempt at that. Why now? Why didn't it need to be talked about last year?
I did talk about it last year. At the Big Ten Media Days in 2022, also talked about it in May of 2020, and now, before the season starts, not game 3, not game 4, now, because I believe action needs to be taken now.
Ryan?
How do you plan on taking in and watching your team for the first 3 games of the season?
I haven't decided yet.
And what went into your plan to name the 4 different coaches for the 3 games? What was the reasoning behind it?
Because I know how good they are. As I said, all 10 coaches, I believe, are tremendous and talented. And I think it's what's best for our team. And they're going to be able, tremendous opportunity for each one of them to have the experience of managing the game. Going to have Jesse come up in a few moments and talk about that, and I think you'll be more than satisfied that and well document how good our coaches are for that reason. Also why I won each game, because I know each time that a coach is the head coach. I know their preparation is going to be the fullest at the max, and that's going to be the best thing for our football team. When you're the head coach during a game and you're the guardian of victory, that's a tremendous responsibility, and you understand complementary football. It's not just defense. It's not just offense. It's not just special teams. It's the whole team, and A, I know they're going to be great at it, and B, I think it's the best thing for our team.
What do you think your dad can bring to his new role?
Well, it's not new. This is a continuing role for my dad ever since I got here. Since he came in 2016 and moved in right next door. He watches every play, every practice. He's one of the coaches in the building, probably the most that I go to. Dad, what do you think about this? Well, I don't know. Here's what we did. And when I was coaching here or here, and I don't know if that's the right thing for you. And I go, that's the perfect thing. You just saved me 3 hours and a migraine headache of trying to figure this out by what you just said. And I just go ahead and implement it. I've been doing that my whole life. It's my dad. That's my best friend. And I do what he tells me to do, when he tells me to do it, how he tells me to do it, and things just keep working out well for me. So I'm just gonna keep rolling with that.
Chris?
Coach, can you share how you decided to go with the first reps at offensive tackle and the other corner and the edges?
Yeah, we're still sorting that out. Pretty close.
In the back, Jack?
Jim, I know you said you're not sure what you're going to do yet, but how difficult will it be to watch your team, watch somebody else lead your team and not be able to be the guardian of victory on those days?
I don't know yet. I really don't know yet. There's a chance my son Jack's team is going to be playing at the same time. I don't know if he's playing, I'll go watch that game. But I don't know. I don't know if I'll watch it on TV, if I won't be able to watch it. I can't predict, what it's going to be at the time. I mean, it's uncharted waters for me. As a college player, had my arm broken, missed 6 games, I think it was. As a pro player, I don't think I ever missed 3 in a row, and I had all kind of injuries. I mean, the ribs, the broken fingers, things like that. Concussions never kept me out of a game. Had an MCL that put a brace on and played. Had a shoulder separation that I think that might have been 2 games, might have been 3. It was at the end of the season, so it would have been more though. But it's when people say I've heard people comment it's a slap on the wrist. It's more like a baseball bat to the kneecaps or to the shoulder. That's what I equate everything to football. I've never missed 3 games, unless it was for a broken arm or a dislocated shoulder. So to answer your question, I don't know.
Angelique?
Jim, I was wondering, with Sharon out on Saturday also, are you able to elevate an analyst or someone else on staff to have another on-field coach?
That's what I've been told, that we'll be able to elevate an analyst for his role, not for mine. So that I wouldn't be able to be replaced for any of the 3 games with another person. So, yeah, Coach Gilbert is somebody that most likely I'll elevate to that position.
Also, I was just wondering, who will call plays in the first game?
Kirk Campbell. I'm very confident in Kirk's ability. He's been preparing. He's we talk about being dialed in for a game. He's getting as dialed in as well as anybody I've ever seen.
Austin?
Jim, defensively, do you anticipate Jesse will call plays on defense, or will you have somebody else call plays on defense as well?
I anticipate Jesse will.
Ryan?
Regarding the suspension, how did Ward convey that to you, and how would you describe your relationship with him right now?
Yeah, just not one to. I don't really want to go into how it was conveyed. It was conveyed. I respect his decision.
And follow up, I guess. I mean, if you did feel, the level one was wrong. I mean, how did you take the fact that they self-imposed a suspension? If you feel the charge is not wrong, I mean, it's not right.
I'm completely muzzled when it comes to talking about that.
We'll go with one more question, and then we'll bring up Jesse. Tony?
Yes, it's certainly muzzled on that, but just you spoke about your opinion about your feelings going forward. Can you sort of described it like a baseball bat to the knee? Can you just describe your feelings about this process and just navigating to the point?
Yeah, I'm an analogy guy. It feels much closer to that than a slap in the wrist.
Is this one of the tougher things you've gone through as a coach, would you say, or how would you compare it to other things?
I don't know. I really don't know what it's going to be like, and that's what I was asking. I mean, day to day, I've been coaching the team. I'm continuing to coach the team. I mean, some people call up and ask my wife, "What are we doing for the 3-week vacation that we're about to take?" And yeah, she has the same reaction. There isn't one. I'm coaching every single day. There will be this Saturday, the following Saturday, the following Saturday. I won't be able to be on the premises or at the game. And how am I going to react to that? What am I going to feel at that point? I don't know yet.
So first of all, like always, appreciate everybody that's here in person in town, and obviously everybody that's on Zoom as well covering Penn State football. We appreciate it. I'll make a couple statements and then obviously take questions. NBC will be broadcasting its first game ever in Beaver Stadium, which is cool and kind of shocking when I saw that, to be honest with you. You guys had asked about the red, yellow, green list, so I wanted to follow back up on that. The guys that right now have been green lighted, I'll probably just keep it to that, is Tony Rojas, King Mack, Zion Tracy, and Elliott Washington. Just to answer that question, I wanted to follow back up because I didn't have that information for you guys the other day when you asked. Excited about having Tom Bradley, Scrap, and Allen Robinson being the honorary captains. That should be really cool. Obviously, getting a guy like Allen Robinson back is always important, but then having a guy like Scrap, who I've been able to develop a relationship since I came into town, obviously with his history and connections to the program is awesome as well, and I'm glad we're doing that. And when you get into West Virginia, and obviously Neil Brown, I got a ton of respect for Neil, his background as an offensive coordinator and as a head coach. Got a lot of respect. Obviously, this is a regional game, which I think makes sense. I know college football's gotten away from the regional type games and the regional conferences, but I think it makes sense for both schools from a travel perspective as well. From what I understand, Neil will be calling the plays this year, which is really his background. They returned 16 starters. They ended the year with a really good win on the road at Oklahoma State, which is a tough place to play. Got a bunch of starters back, got a transfer. You guys probably remember a receiver named Devin Carter that they got, that we were involved in that process as well. They got some offensive linemen that we recruited heavily, and didn't get those young men to come to Penn State, and are playing well for them, especially up front. They're predominantly 11 personnel spread team, RPO based offense. If you look at statistically what they do best, at least, from last year, is the red zone. They were first in the Big 12 and 12th overall in FBS, and then fourth down conversions, 68%. They were first in the Big 12 and 10th nationally. So I would anticipate in this type of game that they're going to go forward on fourth down. That's something that they have confidence in doing, and I think that's going to play a factor in this game. Obviously, Garrett Green, the quarterback, who I would anticipate is going to be the starter in this game, that'll be a big storyline. Got a ton of respect for the running back, CJ Donaldson, which has kind of got an interesting story if you guys don't know this, but came in there as a tight end, got moved to running back, and has played very well for them. And then back to the offensive line with those young men that we just got done talking about. Defensively, Jordan Leslie, who's been there now for a couple years as the defensive coordinator, 6 returning starters. The middle linebacker, number 1, extremely productive. Koba, he's an impressive player. Has made a ton of plays for him. Young man out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The safety, number 2, Aubrey Banks. The defensive end, number 10, Jared Bartlett. And then another young man that we recruited, number 91, Sean Martin, is a very productive defensive lineman that we're very familiar with. And then special teams, Jeff Kuntz, 5 starters. They're really the complete opposite of us. They got everybody back, long snapper, punter, kicker, return men. They're all back, so experienced in that area. Preston Fox, the punt returner, he was 3rd in the Big 12 and 24th nationally in punt returns, so that'll be a challenge. And then they have an Australian punter, number 41, Oliver Straw, who has the ability to do the variety of Australian-style kicks that can be challenging and problematic. So we're excited to be in game week. We obviously went on Sunday. Yesterday was the players' off day. And then, we're back into practice today. Today's a work day for us. So appreciate you guys being here and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, we'll go to the Zoom. We'll start with Rich Scarcella, and then Mark Wogan. Rich, you're on deck.
Good afternoon, James. How are you today?
Good, Rich. How are you, man?
I'm great, thanks. James, can you please evaluate the preseason performance of Drew Aller?
Yeah, I think you guys know this. This is something that I probably drive everybody crazy about, but we basically keep a record of everything. So every throw, completion percentage, touchdown to interception ratio, explosive plays. We even track, what we would say. Okay, so I guess what I'm saying is you have interceptions, which are easy to track. Well, if there were interception decisions, in terms of he threw the ball and he was fortunate that the DB dropped it, but that was a intercepted or an intercepted type throw, then we track that as well to make sure that we're able to kind of have an understanding of decision making as well. And he's been really good. His decision making's been good. His completion percentage has been really good. And then another thing that's really cool is having all this data, then you're able to go back and compare to historical data. You're able to compare it to Trace McSorley. You're able to compare it to Sean Clifford, so on and so forth. So I think there's a ton of value in that in terms of trying to get an idea of how you are in camp. We're different in college football, obviously, than the NFL, where you have a preseason and you kind of got a pretty good understanding of how you are. When you're going against yourself, sometimes that's hard to tell. Are you going against a really good defense? Are you going against a poor defense? And obviously, you guys know I don't feel that way about our defense. But my point is sometimes it's hard to really kind of have an idea of how good you are or what some of the challenges may be. So I thought he had a great camp. All his numbers were really good. And, there's been some great situations that have come up in terms of how we cover situational football, whether it's 2-minute or 4-minute, how to manage all those types of things. And again, I think going against a really good defense and a really good defensive back unit has been a ton of value in that. And I think what we do defensively, testing protections in terms of pressures and disguising coverages, it's challenging for a young quarterback. So I think all those things have been really valuable, and hopefully will put our QBs in the best position to be successful. But I think Drew's had I would say a good camp, and a camp that's given himself and the coaches and his teammates a bunch of confidence. So I hope that answers your question.
All right, we'll go to Mark Wogenrich and then Frank Bodani. You're on deck.
Hi, James. How are you?
Good, Mark. How are you?
Good, thanks. The weekly release this week noted Mike Yursich moving to the booth this season. What prompted that decision, and then what role does Danny O'Brien play with that?
Yeah, I think two things. I think it's a good question, and I think it's a good follow-up question as well. I think Danny's been a big part of that. Danny now spending over a year with Mike and knowing how Mike wants to do things. Danny playing for me, coaching for me. There's a lot of alignment there, and has built a ton of respect with our quarterbacks. So I think that's played a big part in it. But it's probably one of the things that I'm most excited about. I think as an offensive coordinator specifically, there's no better place to call the game than in the booth. Controlled environment, you got your notes out, you can see it all, you're not relying on somebody else to echo information to you that maybe you can't see across the field, the corner's alignment, the far safety's alignment. You're able to rely on your vision and your information. There's still going to be people up there helping them, but I also think it's Mike's respect for our staff and our assistant coaches, that there's strong voices, including Danny on the sideline, to manage that. But I think it's ultimately Mike saying, where can I be the best offensive coordinator, and where can I call the best game? And it's from the booth. And this was something, it's not like we talked about it and then he came back to me. He came to visit with me about it. He said, this is what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts? And I was on board because as an offensive play caller, I don't even think it's close. I think it's the best place to call the game from.
Let's go to Frank Bodani and then Mike Gross. You're on deck.
Hey, good afternoon, James.
Hey, Frank.
Thank you.
How are you, man?
Hey. Good, real good. So you mentioned about Drew's camp being good. Is he your official starter for the season, for the beginning of the season? Is that a decision you're going with publicly? And how close is the competition with him and Bo?
Yeah, he's had a really good camp. I'm not making any announcements at this time. But yeah, he's had a really good camp. I do think it's been good competition, and like I've told you guys all camp, not only has Bo done some nice things, and Bo brings an element, that maybe Drew doesn't have, and maybe even factoring those things in. I think sometimes as a running quarterback like Trace was and like Bo is, sometimes those things are hard to evaluate in practice because you don't really see them. It's not like he's out there making people miss and breaking tackles in practice, which I think is a little bit of his style. He really reminds me of a bigger Trace. But also, like I've told you guys all camp, is I think Jackson Smolik's had a really good camp too, which is nice because we think we got three quarterbacks that have all shown signs that we can win with. I think the game would be different. And I think that is challenging as an offensive coordinator, is how do you have enough within your system to take advantage of the strengths of all your quarterbacks. And, we want to make sure that we have game plans that play to all three of their strengths. So that's challenging.
Let's go to Mike Gross and then Donnie Collins. You're on deck.
Hi, James. How are you?
Good, Mike. How are you?
Good, thanks. Last week there was a report about the NCAA academic progress rate numbers, and for 21-22,
and they were not good relative to the Big Ten, and also I think relative to other years in your time here. So with that in mind, do you have any reaction to that? Is that in any way deceptive? What's your sort of take on that?
Yeah, so I think first of all, I think everybody knows how important academics are to Penn State, the university as a whole. And when I'm saying that, I'm talking about obviously in the athletic department, and then with our football program, both present day and from a historical perspective, something that we take tremendous pride in and is very, very serious to us. And to your point, we've historically been really good in that. I think the year before COVID, I think we had a perfect 1,000 APR. So it's something that we take a lot of pride in, and obviously, we're going to spend a lot of energy and resources on getting it back where we want it to be. And Pat is aligned on that, and I'm aligned on that, and so is our staff. So we take a lot of pride in it, and we'll get it right. I think the last thing I'd say, though, is ultimately, if you look at our graduation rates have really been good. The actual graduation rates, not the predictor of graduation.
Let's go to Donnie Collins, and then Corey Geiger, you're on deck.
Hey, James.
How you doing?
Pretty well. How comfortable are you with where the specialists are at after camp, and kind of what you were talking about earlier with metrics? Does that, when you're replacing an entire staff of specialists, does metrics make that a lot easier, or is there some factors that kind of, when you're going into replacing that, make it a little more difficult to tell with crowds and pressure and stuff like that?
You said staff. Did you misspeak right there? Did you mean the players?
Yeah, I kind of meant players, like staff player, like kicker, punter.
Well, we're not at that stage yet in terms of how you're defining them. But yeah, I think your point is a good one. I think the metrics help in terms of being able to say, okay, what was our kick percentage last year in games? What was it in practice? What are these guys doing it right now? I think you guys have seen, like, we try to make practice really challenging and difficult on those guys as well. So a lot of times the games are easy. I mean, as you know, whether it's music or whether it's horns or whether it's whistles or whether it's wet balls or whatever it may be, try to make it really challenging in practice. So I think that helps. But I think at the end of the day, you never truly know at any of these positions, whether it's offense, defense, or special teams, until they get out there and do it in games. But I think they have done, and we've done everything we possibly can to get them prepared for it. I think the competition that we have had in terms of going out and bringing in some veteran guys, not necessarily to take the jobs, but to come in and create a true competition between some veterans from the outside and then some guys within our program that we're growing and maturing and developing. I think that's really helped. There's been legitimate competitions at kicker, punter, snapper, and kickoff. All of them, there's been legitimate competition, which I think brings the best out in everybody and elevates the room. So, we've been pleased with it. And to your point, I think the numbers compare favorably to years past from practice.
Let's go to Corey Geiger, and then Johnny McGonigal, you're on deck.
Hi, James.
Hey, Corey.
With college football changing the rule about no stoppage of the clock after first downs, there's an expectation there will be fewer plays in the game, maybe 8, 10, 12 fewer plays, I think
it's being anticipated to be about 6 on either side of the ball. I think if you look at the last game that was played, I think it was about 5 if you look at the last game that was played, I think it was 5 plays on offense, so 10 plays overall. But your point is accurate.
Does that impact anything in terms of your rotations, getting younger guys? I know you play a lot of depth, especially on defense. Does that come into play if there's fewer plays?
No, because again, it's outside of our control. We're going to do whatever we got to do to win the game and continue to develop our roster and stay fresh for the fourth quarter and stay fresh for a long season. But yeah, it makes it more difficult, right? You're going to have less opportunities. You're going to have less plays. I know we'd like to fit the football game into a tight, neat box. The NFL is fascinating that it's almost exactly the same time every single game, which I think helps. But I also don't hear anybody complaining about football and watching football and enjoying football. So I think there's reasons why we're doing it other than maybe specifically what we're stating we're doing it for.
We'll go to Johnny McGonigal, and then we'll do questions for the room.
Hey, James, how are you?
Hey, John. Good, man. You?
Good, good. At the top, you mentioned 4 true freshmen already getting that green light. We've heard good things about them throughout the offseason. But what has Rojas, Washington, Tracy, and Mack done at this point before a game is even played to earn that green light?
Well, I think they're because there's another group, right? As you guys know, there's another group of yellow guys that you hope by game 5, game 4, game 5, somewhere around there, that they're going to be ready to be green lighted as well. What these guys, I would say, is these guys have shown that they're the closest, not just to play on defense, but also have significant roles on special teams. And I think that's one of the big things out there for recruits and players, and whether it's in college or even in the NFL, there's so much value in that in terms of, okay, here's a guy that's in the 2 deep on special teams, and here's a guy that's in the 3 deep on offense or defense. He's going to play enough that it makes sense to greenlight him and go from game 1. He's going to get enough reps between the combination of his offensive responsibility and his special teams responsibility, or his defensive responsibility and his special teams responsibility, that everybody's comfortable with it. The coaches are comfortable with it. The players are comfortable with it, and it makes sense. So that's where those guys have been able to get the green light, is being in what I would consider the 3 deep on defense and being within the 2 deep on enough special teams units that it makes sense.
All right, if you have a question in the room here, please raise your hand. We'll get a mic to you. We'll start with Mark over here.
Hey, James, the Big Ten has a new rule about reporting participation before games. You've always been somebody who's played it kind of close to the vest with injuries and whatnot. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are, and did you kind of see this coming?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't really care what the rules are, just as long as everybody's following the same rules. Whether that is reporting injuries or whether that's playing a 9 conference game schedule or an 8 conference game schedule, there should be more consistency across the board. This has been something that's been talked about for a long time. I think one of the reasons that I'm fine with it too is we don't really get into the specifics of the injury. It's just who's available and who's not for the most part. I think you're going to see that happen to some degree across college football. I do think it's important, like most things. Again, it should be consistent. Everybody should be doing it the same way. But no, this has been something that's been discussed for a long time in the Big Ten. I even remember back in my days in the SEC, this being discussed. So I think you're going to see this here in the next couple of years be more of a standard across college football for a lot of reasons that I think you guys are aware of.
Coach, you mentioned in your opening statement about the history between these 2 teams. Have you taken time in the last couple of weeks to really learn the history of Penn State-West Virginia rivalry? Have you taken time to teach the players about this rivalry? I know it's been 30 years since these 2 teams played.
No, because again, when you talk about history and you talk about recent history, again, I don't think there's been a game played while these guys were alive. So it's like, this is very similar to another game that we played here recently that there was a ton of questions about. We talk about the history of the game, and that's what it is. It's history. And again, that history although it would be nice to take some time and talk about the history of college football and the history of this region and some of these games, there's just not a whole lot of value in that in terms of getting our guys ready to play this game and be successful. There's not a whole lot of storylines that would make sense for them. Besides, there's a lot of guys on their team that they know through the recruiting process or from the region, guys that they played with in high school that went there or came here. So there's a little bit of that. But no, we don't spend a whole lot of time on it because I don't think there's a whole lot of relevant information that will impact, winning.
John?
Hey, James, how are you?
Hey, John, did you get a haircut?
Yeah, I did.
Let me see. Let me see what you're working with under there. Nice.
One for like
it almost
4
looked like a total buzz cut the way that was.
Hopefully, I'm a ways away from that. But
is that a shot at me?
No, just a general statement.
Okay.
A lot of people talk about Kalen King and Johnny Dixon, and for good reason. What do you expect out of Cam Miller this year, and how much does he allow you to rotate at that outside cornerback spot specifically?
Yeah, Cam's a young man that I just have so much respect for. We just got done talking about him as a coaching staff and adding him to our leadership council. He's just a very driven, motivated, high production, low maintenance young man that is maximizing his Penn State experience. He's a guy that I think is going to probably start on 4 units on special teams, which I think is very telling. I think he's a young man that's going to play a bunch for us on defense as well. So just he's a guy that's really earned everybody's respect within the program enough that he was able to play as a true freshman last year. And then I think there's a ton of confidence within his teammates and within the coaches that he's done all the right things and taken all the necessary steps to build on what he did last year. And I think he's confident, and I think his teammates are confident in him, and I think the coaches are as well. But I'm proud of him. I'm proud of him. I'm really glad that we were able to go to Florida and get him. And I'm very appreciative that his mom and dad had the confidence in us to send him here. And I may even try to, you've heard me say this before with certain guys, I may even convince mom and dad to try to have a few more because we love them that much. Send them to, the Poconos, up to one of those vacation spots, romantic vacation spot in the Poconos. They're watching right now trying to figure out what the Poconos is, but we know.
In the back, Allie.
Sure. Thanks, Dustin, and thanks for you guys, as always, for coming out. It's great to be back. Great to have the last day of the 23 season. Excited for the new year and excited for the potential of our team as we embark on the 23 season. I think it's a group that I've really come to enjoy coaching. Going through training camp where we kind of forged the calluses that are necessary for us to get through a tough season, I enjoyed being with these guys. I think this was by far the most productive camp that I've had since I've been back here as the head coach, and a lot of it is because of the type of locker room we have, and I've been talking a lot about that locker room, and I know that we've made quite a bit of headlines with declaring that we're now ready to compete for championships, which to me, I don't know what the big deal about saying that is, other than it's important that we now have the foundation that I think is necessary in the locker room with the player-driven culture that allows us to go do just those things. It's pretty cool to kick off the 23 season against my alma mater. I've got a lot of respect for Coach Schiano and the staff that he's put together. I mean, if you check the history of him, and obviously being a Towson alum, it was really important to me as we embarked on hiring a coach to kind of know who he was. And I mean, the guy, all he does is win, whether it's at North Carolina Pembroke, whether it's at West Florida, to see what he's been able to do with those type of programs and in a very, very fast time frame. I mean, he didn't come in and have to wait 4 years to declare championships. He did it in 2. So that speaks volumes to the type of coach that he is and how he's able to get his team prepared to play. I look back at my time there, at Towson and very thankful for that opportunity. A young kid from the southwest section of D.C. ended up going to school up the road, and it changed my life. The first person in my family to go to college, and it was mostly because of the game of football. And Towson, I'll be forever indebted to what Towson has done for me and my family and in my life. I got a chance to talk to Coach Schiano after he was hired. The guy is a football coach, and he's a guy's guy, and you can see, you know, when I followed them over the course of the last summer as we prepare for him, you can see that those guys have really bought in to what it is that he's brought to the table. You know, when you look at Towson as a team on offense, you know, they're a team that's going to play with great tempo. You know, their offensive coordinator came from Stetson and has played with great tempo. They've got some really talented skill players, you know, 2 receivers there that both 19 and 13 that are an experienced group. Their O-line, they have a bunch of returning starters on the O-line, and they're not small. When you look at traditional FCS teams, very rarely do you look across the board and see 5 300-pounders, and they've got just that. They've got a terrific returner skill guy in number 0, Diego, and the job he did a year ago. He's one of those guys we've got to really do a good job in the kicking game of containing, but also, you know, him as a runner. On defense, it starts with 55. Their Mike linebacker, who a year ago played a little bit of DN, a kid right there from the Northern Virginia area, and really is a game plan record when you watch what he did a year ago. They've got size up front on the D-line as well. They're a 3-down team, so when you look at what they did a year ago with the previous staff, there's not necessarily a wholesale change in what they did on defense, because there's some very similar things when we studied Towson's personnel, but obviously looked at West Florida and the things that Coach did down there. It wasn't a wholesale change for the defensive philosophy for them, so something that we've been able to do, and they do a really good job at it. So we're excited about this opportunity to be back at home and open up in the shell against, again, a really good FCS team in Towson. As I've always said, you know, you only get one chance to make a great first impression each and every year. And for us, it's going to be really important that we get off to a fast start to establish an identity as to the type of team we want to be this year. And so be really important for us that it's more what we do than what Towson will do. And so as we prepare for this game, most of our attention has been on our execution of the things we did well throughout camp. And then we'll have to do a really good job in the course of the game as coaches when we understand and figure out what it is they want to do to stop us, to make the necessary adjustments, which I feel really comfortable that we will. We need the fans behind us. We'd love to have a bunch of people in the shell for that game and to start the season to really to create a 12th man per se, or some home field advantage that will help us, as we've got some great opportunities coming up through our home schedule. All start Saturday, and I'll close with our game captains. We do weekly game captains, and this week we'll start off with 3 guys that came back for a 6th year, a COVID year per se. And Colton Spangler, Jay-Sean Jones, and Fanaje Gote will be our captains for the Towson game, all coming back for that COVID year that they've been given. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Raise your hand. We'll get you a microphone. Say your name and outlet. Appreciate it. We'll start with Dave.
Mike, the boxes that you wanted to have checked in August when you began camp. Camp is now done. What was the most important box, or the most important boxes you wanted to have checked, for whether it was offensive line or defense, and how do you feel you addressed those questions?
It wasn't really personnel. I mean, obviously we had personnel things to fill, but we felt like we were able to fill those needs, whether it's through the portal, as we went through spring ball and then summer camp. The thing that we needed to find out from camp was, were we the team I thought we could be? And you usually find those things out by, you know, when you go through summer camp, and I've been here a couple of years, and you know, it's the one time you have an opportunity to just do football for 24 hours. You know, right now we're back into the 20-hour rule because of the NCAA rules. Our players took full advantage of the 24/7 football. I didn't deal with one distraction during training camp, and I can tell you over the last 3 years, there's been, if I could do a documentary on training camp, there'll be all types of great stories behind the scenes. This one was clean, and it verified to me who I thought we could be as a team, which is why when I talk about this player-driven culture, that has been established. It's come through and it's real. And so, what we need to do now, we've got the bus loaded up, we've got the players in the right positions, we've got the destination set, and now we've got to start our trip. And that's what this Saturday is all about for us.
Hey, Lox.
What's up, Alex?
Not too much. Kind of based on what you were just saying, I know there's excitement going into every season, but is there an extra buzz this year just based on how camp went and based on all the excitement and optimism going into this year?
Not from us. I mean, we took our summer camp schedule, our training regimen, how we prepare. It's the same. I mean, what's different is seeing this. This is pretty impressive to see this type of interest in our program, and it's exciting. But we know that we're not going to let the goals we set get in the way of the work that we have to do.
And just to follow up real quick, I know you mentioned, you talked about making the headlines about competing for a championship and all that, but in terms of week one, Towson, how does this game start that journey towards what your guys' ultimate goals are at the end of the year?
Yeah, the start of the seasons is always important because it's about momentum. As I told our team yesterday, I'm not going to sit up here and make the Towson Tigers the '85 Chicago Bears, but they also need to realize that this is a team that a game like this can make their careers, make their season, and the type of coaching staff and the type of program that they have, they're not going to come in here and just lay down. So it's going to be important, not that we focus on Towson, but that we focus on Maryland. And I've said this in here since I've been here very few times. We don't prepare for Towson differently than we prepare for a team like Ohio State. We have a standard that's set. Our players believe in that standard, and they're upholding the standard, and it's going to come down to what we do Saturday, how we execute, and whether or not we play the Terp way.
Coach, great to be here for another year.
What's up?
You lose three receivers who are NFL caliber in Dante and Jacob and Raheem, and yet you still have Jay Sean coming back and guys with experience. Are we going to not miss a beat with the new receiving core?
No, I won't discount the production that we had out of guys like Dante Demas, Rakim Jarrett, Jacob Copeland, and what they've been able to do for the program. So it's not we don't skip a beat, but what we've tried to do with our program is we prepare for the days these guys leave, because our goal is to help those guys create value to be able to reach that goal, to play in the next level, earn degrees, prepare for life after football. But any program, and I've been a part of some ones that have been successful for long periods of time, it's all about developing the program, and that's why I constantly talk about us being a developmental program. And what I need to do as the leaders to prepare that we're going to have players leave, coaches leave, but I have to have plans and processes in place that allow us to not take steps back when those things happen. And we're fortunate with the guys we've been able to bring in. Caden Prather, Tyrese Chambers, those guys have created value at other places, and now they have a chance to come help us. The younger players that have played for us a year ago, the Octavian Smiths of the world, Leon Haughtons, the Shalik Knotts, those guys are now thrust into bigger roles, which because of the way we develop them, they're ready to go, and I'm excited to see what these guys look like going into the 23 season.
Hey, Coach.
What's up, Varun?
How you doing?
Here we go, technical question.
You talked about there's a lot of names at that wide receiver position. Do you have an idea of how you see the rotation and kind of the hierarchy they're shaking out?
Of course I have an idea. I'm not going to share. No, we have an idea. We play a lot of players. You look at it, the way we play receivers, the way we play corners. I'm the guy that kind of, the puppet master that goes into the meeting rooms, and as coaches and as assistant coaches, having been there, you kind of become kind of a creature of habit where you want to play the guy that knows what to do, but he may not be the best player. And so my challenge is let's get the best players on the field and do the things they can do. And so we got a bunch of receivers that have the ability, have played some games for us, have played places, other places. We know how we want to rotate them. They'll all have roles for us. Roles change daily. Roles change every game. And so I'm excited because that group is a talented group.
Does the variety in skill sets you have, like Tyrese is a deep threat, Caden Prather is kind of a big body guy. Does that allow you guys to mix and match?
Man.
Say it again?
You got it backwards.
Is it backwards?
Yeah. Caden's a big down the field, big play threat. Tyrese is a in the middle option route runner that creates space. Yeah.
How do you kind of see, with those varied skill sets, does that allow you guys to mix and match a little bit more?
Well, it allows you to be diverse in what you do offensively, and to me, it's always been about getting your best players the ball, and both those guys are guys that have shown from spring ball till now that they're guys that we want to find ways to get them the ball, and we try to do it based on what they do well, and then we try to develop the things they don't do well so that eventually they get caught up.
Coach Locke.
Sean.
Good to see you.
What's up, man?
With a program like Towson with a new coach, what's the challenge in playing a team with a brand new coach? I know you can go back and look at his old film, but I mean, this is the first time he's taken over this program this way. What's the challenge there in facing a team like Towson with Schiano, his first game ever?
I mean, the challenge is this guy went to UNC Pembroke and got that team the fastest to the Division II playoffs in the history of Division II football, and then he broke his record at West Florida. So a good football coach. So the challenge is knowing that a team that we don't know a lot about are going to come in here really well coached, really well disciplined, and will play with great effort. And so when you face this type of situation, which I've faced obviously the last few years here with opening opponents, people we don't know a lot about, it's going to be more about what we do than what they do. And our execution's got to be at an all-time high. And I just literally just finished a staff meeting with the coaching staff saying, let's figure out what we do really well, and let's make sure those things are in our game plans, and let's get that executed. And then as we get into the course of the game, the chess match starts once the game is played, and we've got to do a great job of kind of figuring out quickly what it is and how they want to attack us in all three phases, and then be prepared to make the necessary adjustments. The one benefit we have is that because we do a lot on defense and we do a lot on offense, that there's very few things that we'll see that maybe we haven't had to deal with because of the types of systems we run.
Hey, Coach, how you doing? So obviously a lot of personnel brought in through the portal, but on the coaching side, you guys bring in Kevin Sumlin and Josh Gaddis. What's the type of impact they've already had? Because obviously two incredible resumes to an already potent offense. What's the type of impact they've had on your players so far?
Yeah, and let me throw in Latrell Scott, another guy with an impressive resume, a young guy at the time who took University of Richmond to the 1AA playoffs as a head coach, as a younger guy. He's on our staff. Zach Spavital, who came in, he's the son of a high school coach. So we were able to add some really talented coaches, and I was deliberate in how we went about filling these voids. We lost some really talented coaches a year ago that had opportunities that they thought were better opportunities for them and their families. And so to be able to attract guys like Josh, like Kevin, like Latrell and Zach, I think it speaks volumes to what the University of Maryland football program has become. It's become a place that people see as a place they can create value for themselves. And so, both Kevin and Josh have extensive resumes in terms of what they've been able to do. I've been joking Kevin about the Johnny Manziel documentary that's been out, and notice he didn't show up in it to talk very much, but both experienced guys, and having gone through some of those things, whether it's Kevin as a head coach, Josh as a coordinator that's won Big Ten championships, their experience has been invaluable to helping us take the next step as a program.
What's up, guys? How you doing? Good. Yeah, here we are. I'll try to answer anything I can to help you out.
It's just kind of what are you expecting from this Northwestern team, given the way that things have gone the last few months for them?
Well, I think the thing you got to remember is they have a lot of experienced players. On defense, they're really strong up the middle. The two safeties, the two linebackers are really experienced. The McLaughlin kid who plays D-end is an experienced guy. We're talking about fourth-year starters, third-year starters. So when half your defense has played that much football, they're going to be ready to play. They had. If you look at their results, I know you look and say it's 1-11, but when you really dig deep, turnovers are what killed them. When they didn't turn the ball over, they're a very good football team. It's not much unlike us. And if we can keep from turning the ball over, we got a chance. So, I think they got experienced defense. I think on offense, there's several transfers at wide receiver that are going to help. I think Henning and Johnson, those two guys, they're good players. We watched them on Michigan tape, and the quarterback, they have not announced who the starter is. They are different. Brian and Sullivan are different. So it'll be interesting to see who, you prepare for both. One's more mobile than the other guy. One's more of a pocket type guy. And then I think Cam Porter, their running back, is a special player. I think that unfortunately he had an injury that kind of set him back, but from all accounts he's back to who he was, and he's a 220-pound Big Ten running back that if we're not, buckled up, it's going to be a tough day. So, yeah, I think schematically they do a very good job. Offensively, I know Mike Bajakian. He's a good football coach, really, really good football coach. Has been at every level. Defensively, Coach Braun is running the defense, and if you look at what they've done in his past, he has climbed the ranks and done it the right way at every stop, and he's worked for friends of mine who speak really, really highly of him. So he was brought in there initially to fix the defense, and then he got some more put on his plate, obviously, but and then special teams, the same fellow that was running it who does an excellent job, he's still running the special team. So from a schematic standpoint, I think it's going to be more of the same. Everybody tweaks and does things. And I know, with Coach Braun coming from a different school, he's got to adapt his system to their personnel. But, as a coach, there's certain things that your go-to things, and I'm sure we'll see those.
Gavin, given that you named him the starter before training camp, I'm curious, is it fair to assume that he'll be allowed to play through mistakes, and I guess, for lack of a better term, just how long of a leash is he working with?
Yeah, I don't even like to get into that stuff, to tell you the truth. He's our starting quarterback. I make decisions, which is always in the best interest of the team. What gives us the best chance to win? So I'm not going to address that. That's a hypothetical.
Coach, what do you hope to see out of your defense in this first game of the season?
Well, they're grown. They developed. At times we played good football last year, good defense, and other times we gave up plays. So we're deeper. We have more players that can play, which helps. It's going to be a very warm day from all accounts on the weather forecast. So the more able bodies you have that can go out and play well, the more it's going to help. There'll be a lot of emotion first game. You're really going to have to work hard to make sure we can keep everybody out there playing.
From a scheduling perspective, what's it like, and how do you feel about opening against a conference opponent?
Well, it's been good. I think it gets everybody lit up and attentive, and not that you're not going to be attentive for anybody you open with, but I think when you put, the Big Ten in front of it, it gives you a little extra juice for sure.
Can you talk a little bit more about your relationship between you and Bajakian? I know you guys both started as GAs at Rutgers. You guys both coached with the Bears, several other NFL stops, and just talk about your relationship.
Yeah, we were never together, though. I don't know him extremely well. I know him professionally. I don't know him personally. But, he's a Jersey guy, so I know people who do know him.
Greg, you've said in the past that, you thought players should be paid. I don't know if you caught Jim Harbaugh's comments yesterday about revenue sharing and what you thought of it.
I didn't catch his comments, but I heard some people told me about it. I want to focus on Northwestern because that's why we're here today. But I think it's on record. I believe that players should be paid for 20 years now. So that's nothing new. I think we missed the boat a while ago, and I think we need to make it right. But again, I'd like to stick to Northwestern.
Coach, last year you said that this team would go as far as the offensive line would take them. Feel a little bit more confident this year with the continuity and some of the new personnel and the coaching staff you have that they can take that step forward collectively?
I think we have. I think we've gotten better. I mean, as I watch them practice, it's a better product on the practice field. Now we got to take it to the game field.
Obviously playing on a Sunday, then having the short week. I mean, how many adjustments did you guys have to put in place this week to kind of account for those schedule changes?
Well, that's really my job, to make sure that the young coaches have done the breakdowns and we're ready to go once the game is completed on Sunday. But I've dealt with short weeks in college. I've dealt with short weeks in the National Football League. You just have to adapt your schedule a little bit, a little less time to get stuff done the following week. But I'm excited. I mean, we got a chance to play on opening weekend, the only game on Sunday at noon. So be a lot of eyes on the Scarlet Knights.
How are you guys doing health-wise coming out of training camp, and are there any key players or guys with injuries that could prevent them from being able to play on Sunday?
Yeah, now I guess you guys are familiar with the report that's going to come out on Saturdays 2 hours before kickoff. I think we're going to just go to that from now on. That'll be the, 2 hours before it'll be announced. That's going to kind of be the standard now in the Big Ten, which I think is a good start. I really think we should do more. I think we need to make sure we protect the student athletes. With gambling really growing the way it has, when that information becomes so valuable, hopefully we're starting something here that'll grow. My experience in the National Football League, I think that they're doing a good job with that, the way that they get the information out. I don't know if we have to do it like they do, but I think Commissioner Petiti is right on board. We're going to get this thing rolling, and then we'll continue to grow, and I think we'll be a leader in that fashion.
To open up the season in a home environment, SHI Stadium, and you have several home games to start the year, how much of a boost is that just for your guys as a whole?
Well, I love playing at home, obviously. I love SHI Stadium, love our fans. I'm sure they're going to bring a huge home field advantage this weekend. Can't wait to get back there with them. I've been here a long time, a lot of years. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. But we have some very loyal fans, and we're gonna provide what they're looking for. I believe that over time, it's a steady growth, and we're going to continue to grow. And like I've said before, we're going to get it back to where it needs to be and beyond. But it's a journey, and we're all on that journey together. Our fans, our team, the university, the state.
You have a lot of depth at running back. How do you foresee carries being split up on Sunday, and do you see a workhorse type guy, a committee? How do you see that unfold?
Whatever gives us the best chance to win. That's how we're going to do it. And how I predict that. You always go into the game with a plan, but then how things are going to change during the game. No, you don't know. So you have to be prepared to adapt, and we will be prepared to do that. But again, playing time, all those things always come down to what gives us the best chance to win.
Just what did you see from Jaquay Jackson in camp? Just the way he got acclimated both to the team and the way he learned the offense.
Yeah, Jaquay did a good job. Again, he just started in the summer. It's not like he's been here for a while, so he had to learn the playbook. He had to get used to how we condition, how we train, how we do everything. I think he's really done a good job at that. I think his progress will continue throughout the year, but he's very talented, so we're grateful to have him.
Going to run 3 hot topics by you. You already addressed 2 of them with Jim Harbaugh's revenue comments and the injury report. I guess the third one is just the new first down rule. There's some talk about that after the first weekend of college football. I guess just how do you think that will impact the game? Have you guys prepared for it in training camp, and just what's your overall thoughts on it?
Well, I just think you're going to have less plays. I guess what I've read and what I've seen is there's been overall less possessions, which obviously is less plays. How that affects our game, we're both playing by the same rules, so I think it'll be negligible. I won't even try to say it, but it won't be a big impact on the game. It'll just be what it is.
We'll go Christian and then Chris to finish.
This will be your 15th season opener at Rutgers. Still get that excitement level, still get that energy and buzz, and how's it different than 2001?
Yeah, never been more focused than I am today, never been more excited than I am today about this team. We've had some great teams here, some good teams, some not so good teams, but I love coaching this team, I love our staff, and I love being back at Rutgers and in New Jersey, my home state. So I always tell our players, don't wish away time, right? Use every second you have to prepare, and then prepare through the event. So I'm trying to abide by my own advice, but yeah, I'm real excited to get started and to do it at home in a Big Ten game as the only game in the country. That's fun.
What are you excited to see out of some of the more veteran players on the defensive side of the ball, the guys that have been with the program for a long time?
Well, there's several of them, right? And it's nice. I've talked to you guys about this, that I look at it as a pipeline. And finally, they're not all the way to the end of the pipeline, but they're getting close. So we have some guys that came in here, a guy like Aaron Lewis, who came in here at 6'5", 212 pounds. And now he's 6'5", 262 pounds. Well, that's a pretty big jump, right? And you play that out over a bunch of guys, Tyreen Powell, Jennings, you just go down, Robert Longerbeam, Max Melton. Now they're all starting to become grown-ups. Are they at that full development stage? No, not yet. But they're getting closer and closer, and it's been my experience that when you get those guys on the back end of that pipeline, if they are really working the way these guys are, that they're going to play well. So I expect them to play well, and we need them to play well to win. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.